pretty much a review slash reaction to season 1 of It Welcome to Derry. Man, what an amazing show that this is. We pretty much are picking up where the events of part picking up in the time in the 60s, in the events of the first two films before they even came out and before even Stephen King's It series was taking place. And we start off in probably in unconventional, convincing fashion, where at least all of the kids that were behind, Mike and Will and so on and so forth, were like all of them were in the movie theater. And it turns out, of course, Pennywise, by himself was there, and he pretty much goes in and does what he does, swallows up and eats up the kids, and like pretty much preys, on them, on their weakling, because they're weaklings and everything. But what I really love about this is because of the fear and the angst and the pressure, of like knowing that you got a absolute cosmic force. And the biggest person, I'm gonna try to see if I can find the biggest person that pretty much they was playing terminally on the inner fears. Let me try to see if I can find this character in here. No, not that. All right, here we go. Yeah, pretty much the main character of the five, Lily. Pretty much Pennywise was using her as like a pawn of a vessel, in order for her to get her to do the things that he couldn't been able to do, or he couldn't been able to he could be able to accomplish his goal and mission. He figured that he can use, the fear and the angst, and then later on, as you saw, like how he pretty much, when she ended up trying to escape later on in the season, and she couldn't because she had that fear, she had that inner toxicity, that turmoil in the back of her mind, knowing that Pennywise was still there. It was still there in the background. And when she tried to run, when she tried to escape, he was just always there to catch her. He was always there to figure it out. And I like the fact that, you can look the looks and the fear and the pressure and the anxiety and just the accumulation and the adversity that these kids were under is because of what he was able to do, and what he could have been capable of. And that is just a thing where it was just such an enjoyable part about not just her character, but also of course Pennywise, man. And when I'm watching it, especially seeing that she know that her friends are pretty much being eaten up by this bloodthirsty killer and lurking in their path, while they sit there trying to enjoy, while they're sitting there trying to be entertained. Yeah, man, that was like in the beginning of the first episode, that was absolutely insane. You could not imagine. I couldn't even imagine what they could have been feeling, what they could have been like. Man, that was just something insane. And Pennywise was absolutely played by Bill Skarsgard, a great cast and a great choice. He was absolutely on an absolute venge path. Let me just get the... As you can see, all of the kids, all of Lily and all of her friends right here in the movie theater. That was just something. That was something like they didn't think what could actually possibly happen, or actually possibly the worst possible thing, an outcome that could have happened to them. They couldn't even imagine that being the case. But yeah, but the thing is, Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, was very strategic in his killings. He did not try to just pick them apart one by one by one, and it wasn't like it was it wasn't like it was an absolute, you know, like he normally is, tormenting and torturing. He did it in a way, like I said, was very strategic. He did it in a way because, like I said, he used them as like vessels, as pawns for his own architect and his own ability later on in the show, where so he can lure them down to this basement, lure them down to this one abandoned house in this basement, and while Lily would be there, and so he can use just her and her mind and her and manipulate her and turn everything in her world upside down in order to try to get more kids, in order to try to take them and use them more like spawns, like vessels, and use them more like for his own masking and own undoing, man. That was something insane that when you watch it, you're gonna be like, bruh, like he was on an absolute war path, but a path that you can never really could take him for granted. And like I said, he was very strategic. He was very calculated. He wasn't just doing it for just the thrills. He was doing it because he wanted to send a message. He wanted to send a message, a clear, cutthroat message later on. And I really enjoyed that about him and about the performance by Bill Skarsgård. Now, the character. Now they retconned a few things in the show. They explained a bit about some of the parents. We really didn't get a chance to know Mike back in It Chapter 1. We didn't really know about his parents. We didn't really get a chance to see more about his mom nor his dad. But when we get a chance to see a little bit more backstory and background, and the same thing with Will, we didn't really get to know as much about him in Chapter 1 and even in the series, but they more or less explain it in here, his origins, and we more or less explain more about Mike and his family and the backstory with that. But at the same time, because of these older kids, we get a chance to see exactly what they were planning on, and what they were planning on doing, and what they were planning on accomplishing. Let me get it. My favorite episode. Before I get to my favorite episode, then of course, what I also really like was it was a lot to do with a lot of power scaling, and of course, and sorcery a bit in the later half of the episodes, in episodes 7 and 8. This was actually freaking low. Okay, never mind. Now my favorite episode being episode 6, and what happened with Mabel, played by Madeline Cox. What happened with her? Of course, she kind of gets let me just go to there. Hold on, guys. Let me. All right. So, anyways, I just had to get a little bit of the. I was trying to get the actual article, guys. So hold on. Yeah. So I got it now. All right. So yeah, what I liked about this was, like I was saying before, about Will, and pretty much the following of him. Of course, his friends in danger, like I was saying about before, about Pennywise, more of an active threat, and his father, I forget the actor's name, who plays Leroy, and he doesn't have the best relationship with his father. One, because his father's trying to warn him about him and his about trying to warn Will about, you could possibly be in danger, you could possibly be at odds, and due to the standpoint that, your life could be at stake, and you're not paying attention, you're not being too careful, and I haven't been there as much. And Will, pretty much, like a lot of kids are very rebellious, very much against, the kind of wishes that your parents and your family would hope to protect, and he kind of just doesn't listen. But he said, and like I was saying before, he refuses to follow orders, but he refuses to follow his instructions. But, and I'm reading this, and I'm also reading this article, talking about this, guys, the sins of the fathers. So, a shockingly deep insult from Will, and I know I'm not you, because I know I would never let my friends die, leading to an equally shocking slap in the face to a son by his father, smuggling the line between discipline and anger. A tearful bike ride from base, Will distanced himself from his father when his mother, Charlotte, of course played by Taylour Paige, asking him later if he had liked to talk about it. He silently nods no. Whatever Will is feeling, he's going to tuck it away in a box or somewhere deep, but if something tells me that Pennywise is going to use this against him, but soon not enough. And like I was saying before, Pennywise was very strategic on playing on the fears. So he played on the fears, of course, of Leroy, Charlotte, and of course Will. He played on the fears of Lily. Played on the fears of everybody in this season. And then of course Marge later on down the line. And Mike as well. He played on the fears of everyone. And the problem is, and this can apply to a lot of things in real life too. When you have kids that don't always want to listen to your parents when they're telling you to do the right things, when they're telling you the things that actually could help you down in the long run, they tend to be in the back of your mind, but they tend to like go beyond and go above and beyond your control, or go above and beyond your payroll, to not really get through. So in order for that to happen, you gotta just show some tough love. Then of course, what happens in this in episode 6, after the part of the father sinning from Will of Leroy, and of course, his mother, what happens is a reunion. Derry is hunting for Henry Grogan, and it's 1962, barely 10 years since Emmett Till was lynched, and at the same virulent racist mob mentality runs through the blood of Derry's residents, and Derry is hardly a progressive paradise. Its racial divisions were made clear at the start of the series, and a stark contrast between manicured white suburbs and the tight, condensed apartments occupied by town's black residents. And it might not have been peaceful, but there was quiet. Now rows of drunk towns are looking up for violence. They're searching for a reason to get ugly, and the Viking berserkers are waiting for the horn. A black man whose connections are grisly crime are not even circumstantial, and whose alibi would be even worse for him as if he said it out loud. Enough for assholes to live out their pre-integration power fantasies. Thanks to Charlotte, Hank has refuge at the Black Spot, the new Juke joint owned and operative black airmen at Derry's army base. Like Smoke and Stack and Sinners, the Black Spot is the king to break in his dance floor tonight. But Dick Halloran, played by Chris Chalk, is it too feeling too hot after the night in the tunnels, and after a heated conversation with Hanlon, Dick reveals a little bit more helpful exposition about his visions of the dead. All the while, Ronnie has a tearful reunion with her dad in a way where that warms the heart, but you have to feel for William, whose relationship with his father is on the brink of a collapse. So the thing about Ronnie, if I didn't get a chance to explain her, she pretty much resents a lot of her. She's pretty much resents the fact that her father doesn't believe her, that there could be some evil other natural force, unlike unnatural force, in combination with Pennywise and so on and so on and so forth. She kind of resents the fact that she doesn't get it, that she doesn't believe it, that her father doesn't believe that this unlike creature actually exists. The only few that believe is, of course, her friends that's around her, and of course Dick Halloran, as he goes along this other mission. After that worst conversation with Hanlon, Dick is on Dick is on a mission to try to go find what happened and what's going on in these tunnels. Another entitled, I Am a Freak. I never felt stronger, a 180-degree turn for a character than I have Marge Matilda Lawler in the beginning. I couldn't stand this wishy-washy social climber, and I hated everything about her. Her hair, her sunglasses, her mustard yellow sweaters, and I hoped Pennywise would show up and shove her in a locker. Most of all, I pitied her. She reeked of desperation for the patty cakes, but her accident a few episodes ago has clearly changed her and enlightened her to the plight of the true friend, Lily. Since then, Marge has grown to someone I just might call one of my favorite characters, but I look forward to seeing her discover Derry's many mysteries. And also, I'm a big fan of her buddy romance with Rich. It's cute when adolescent crushes are mutual, but it's also what gives her the power to stand up to the patty cakes who deserve it. And after that unnecessary mean Ricardo jab using her mangled eye to embarrass them, it was a sweet moment when Rich told her her eye was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And it was even sweeter when it became her weapon against her bullies. So yeah, my thing is definitely when Marge comes into the picture, she's pretty much very liked. Unlike Lily, who pretty much was a cog and was like my quote unquote cog in the machine, and she pretty much had a really good, cool romantic relationship with Rich, I didn't really get a chance to really delve too much into him. He really didn't have as much of the stake as everybody else, but he definitely had a stake later on. He definitely had a stake later on in the last couple episodes. You know, when they actually needed to use, like I said, the power scaling and the sorcery and everything like that with this bolt, and it happened to send. Well, I'll get to episode 7 and 8 later on, which I really love those two. I'll break down those in a minute, but because that was very important. But when that happens, it was just when those things happen, and of course that relationship, keen on it gave me something to really latch on and look forward to. So, of course, the biggest shock of episode 6 involves Ingrid, played by Madeline Stowe. After suffering another major hallucination in public, Lily runs to Ingrid for comfort. Arriving to an empty house, Lily finds Ingrid's photo albums in the attic. They're initiates at first until Lily sees an eerie, familiar face as Ingrid's father. When Ingrid arrives, things got even stranger when Lily learns that it's not only that Ingrid in the costume at the cemetery, but it's Ingrid's father was drumroll a circus clown by the name of Pennywise. A stunned Lily learns about Ingrid's backstory, if not Pennywise's own, and it's where we revisit the prologue that kicked off the episode, while the specifics of how the gazebo and that haunted the Skywalk came into contact with Ingrid's father as he still is up in the air, or how her father died, and how we get from her as a vague line like he was taken from me, and how Ingrid stayed in the Derry and grew up to have a job at Juniper Hill. Listening closely to the children, Ingrid learns her father may still be alive. Down in the furnaces in Juniper Hill, Ingrid unwittingly feeds a child to the entity who has taken the form of from her father's old persona. But yeah, Ingrid, and of course, her father being in this shocking revelation of an episode, turned out to be the both together the plot and plan on taking other kids. And then once Lily find the photo of Ingrid, and of course old photo albums, and then of course an eerie familiar face that she saw, yeah, that kind of batted the eyelash to Ingrid, and she didn't really like the fact that she was snooping around looking at old images and photos. And then of course once Lily found out the truth, she wanted to unveil it and reveal it all, and it didn't work out in her favor, man. And in that episode, dog, that blew my mind. That absolutely blew my mind. It was just something that I was just like, whoa, taken aback. And of course, Lily at the time feels betrayed. She feels betrayed by Ingrid. And once she figures out more of the mysteries, what goes on and what happened in Derry, and she wants to try to solve and wants to try to let all of her friends know the real truth. You know, of course, it relates back to Ronnie, it relates back to the Losers Club, it relates back to, of course, Marge and Rich and Will and everybody. Yeah, they are kind of taking the reaction back like it was just absolutely not. They wasn't trying to hear it. They wasn't trying to hear it. But what an episode, man! I really enjoy it. I really enjoy this. Just like, bruh, it felt so riveting. All right, so let's go to the next episode. This is the next episode 7, called The Black Spot. Plays out an inevitability, the burning of Derry's only black-owned bar. It was just a few sentences in Stephen King's novel described in retrospect as a now fleshed out with all the necessary horror and rage it demands, the tragedy of a community in peril, and no matter who its perpetrators are, violence follows them. You can also say that it's about everyone in Derry. Yeah, episode 7, Black Spot, guys. So, Eyes of the Beholder. It's impressive how It Films and Welcome to Derry recognize the power of the eyes, and before the visual motive in the eyes of the darkness is something of a personal trigger of mine, and I get spooked by the notion of something staring back at me. Welcome to Derry has used this motive to the incredible effect in episode 7 is dawned on me. Now it's all one big nod to the headlights, Pennywise true alien form. In the prologue and set in 1908 kicks off the episode. We see Pennywise, a living man. He's a little bit more than a sad clown, played by Bill Skarsgard, of course, and the contempt of his audience of children. Though he knows how to make them laugh, he also makes them cry, and he acts bizarre with a nonverbal performance that explores the cynical nature of life and death. Despite how much of a bummer his show is, it's still a hit and exciting enough to inspire kids to rush the stage. But Pennywise isn't thrilled with his modest success. Backstage, he tells his daughter at work on a clown persona of her own that he is just bidding time until he can perform a bigger audience again. So in this sense, we pretty much figure out, we pretty much got the gist and the indication, of course, of Pennywise is a young man, and then of course he wants to feed on the flesh and contempt on the flesh of young children. He completely turns his own fair share of a cynical nature in life and death. And he lets his daughter know about, his plans on like what he wants to do with what he wants to do and create this clown and create this persona. And then he figures out, and of course Dick Halloran figures out later on about Pennywise and about all the plans and also the communication with the dead and how that could be willing to pay off soon. But with Pennywise, like I said, he was very strategic on his planning and plotting and convincing, his daughter on what they could possibly do to like really reign supreme in that sense. So then of course we get into a tense standoff over Ronnie, his dad Hank, the main legion of white decency, or so they might name themselves, locks the building and burn it down. And that's when Pennywise slithers his way to feast and fatten up another 27-year slumber. Some of our heroes are caught in the fire, except Lily and the president of the Black Spot, while Ronnie and Will scramble to get Hank and themselves out. Rich valiantly saves her fair maiden Marge, who is the low-key MVP of the whole show. And in what is easily the saddest moment in all of Welcome to Derry thus far, Marge and Rich express the love and goodbyes as Rich suffocates and burns to keep Marge safe. Recalling the first encounter, you saw me staring and you said take a picture. It'll last longer. And it was her, and then he said then I wish I could. Yeah. So this is the episode, The Black Spot, where pretty much Rich gets burned alive in order to save not only his friends, but end up saving the love that he ends up holding in Marge. And bro, that was, when I saw this episode, I had to rewatch this like a couple more times because I just could not believe what I was getting myself into. That was an insane episode. And shout out to Esquire, because I'm reading this from them. It breaks down and it really just breaks down exactly like the reaction, the feeling from a lot of fans, because man, that episode just really hit me all the way around. And I know, guys, we're getting a little bit ahead in the show and in these episodes, but man, like these are the moments that really fit and really did his thing, bro. I was just so taken aback by it and so floored and so profound. Oh, Emily Byers, hey, what's going on? And what's your off-topic question? No, I do not. But anyways, like I was saying, yeah, this episode really took me aback. I was so floored exactly what was going on. not only coming off of what we just read about and what I just watched about, Lily finding out about Ingrid and her father and the pictures and the images, learning about Leroy and Will, and of course Charlotte and what they was going through, General Shaw in the fourth and fifth episode, his plans, Marge and what she wanted, the eyes kind of getting sucked in, like, man, this show just kept getting better and better as far as just the episode. It's just not just as far as the episodes, the character development, learning more about Pennywise, his origins, the masking and undoing to him. Man, it just really felt like it was given plan. So yeah, that was something crazy. I could not believe what I was getting myself into. And so its destruction of the black spot is the episode's core, and the structure of evolving and elaborate set please the flashpoint moment when the story threads unravel at once. While Rich dies to save Marge, Dick, and finally speaks to the spirits haunting them. Just 2 weeks ago, Dick told Leroy that he avoids addressing the ghost directly, and with his and other people's survival at stake, he and his brothers help to get the kids out. And like Shoko Kapiwa, War Chief, are more willing to help others. Ahead of the final episode, Dick, learning that he can directly communicate with the dead and some might be willing to help, might pay off big time soon. Alright, so those are my things about that episode. About episode 7, just a little bit of highlights of moments that I thought was very important. Alright. So then we get to the final episode, which I will get to right now. Episode 8 we call Winter Fire. Alright, let me get to that breakdown. Alright. Of course, we get to the 8th and final episode. Spectacular first season, satisfied end to a place where we can't leave fast enough. And it's wall-to-wall action and it's heart-wrenching drama as the Derry residents who know better mobilize to stop Pennywise. For those who don't know what's happening at all, although welcome to Derry sacrifices scares for the sake of a spectacle, shortcomings are made up for a young cast, proving that they've got the talent beyond their years. And Bill Skarsgard asserting his supremacy as the best on-screen monster of his time. Even when Pennywise morphs into a dragon, there's nothing scarier than a clown in the moonlight. Rarely do shows go out with a bang and leaves with whimpering like It Welcome to Derry. Here's everything that happened in Winter Fire. Of course, at the end of last week's episode, we saw the military crack open Shakawa's cage and it keeps it locked in, enabling him to come out for dessert after the absolute feast at the Black Spot Fire. And what in contrast between episodes Raging Inferno in 1 week and a frozen lake the next. Though the weekend containment, Pennywise awoke early to go after Will. And that brings us to this week's opening with a plunging of all Derry into winter. Pennywise, now stronger than ever, keeps the adults at bay. Shepherd all the underclassmen at Derry High School in one place, like lambs to a slaughter, missing from the mass. Kidnapping are Lily, etc. Al, who are still at their hideout with Pennywise, comes to town. Pennywise, the only poses a clown, but credit where it's due. He knows how to make fear funny as hell. And I could think of another evil clown for Warner Brothers. While the trio of tweens race to stick a crystal shear in Pennywise, the adults, including Will's father, Leroy, to get together to save the children. They enlist Dick, who must work through fatigue from the black spot. It's only been a few hours since. Remember to use his powers to locate the shard. Dick informs, although he is brought nearly to the brink of a process, Dick informs the girls have the shard, that this makes the adults even more panic, knowing that the danger they're getting into. Meanwhile, we get a heist movie style rundown of this week's win condition per Rose, Kimberly Rose Guerrero, and they must stick said shard into the old tree that connects into the chain of pillars that keeps Pennywise boxed in. It sounds simple, right? On the way, Rose offers a reminder that the dagger that they can drop anyone insane with a prolonged exposure, and that the one ring isn't only addicting but toxic. This explains that Lily gets temperamental towards Ronnie and Marge at the moment when cooperation is critical. Here, where Welcome to Derry takes one more breath, allowing the characters additional conflict for the show's young actors to shine. Sure, series might be laying thick on Lily as a mental illness metaphor, but Clara Stack is working with what she's got, and Matilda Louder and Amanda Christine are capable of scenes partners who make the heavy emotions land where they should, and reminded of the climax to Marvel's better than it looks Thunderbolts. Sometimes all you need is an earnest group hug to the voices. So yeah, what happens was, of course, Marge, Lily, and Ronnie all were pretty much together in cooperation. They had to use his cloak and dagger in order to hit a lit and hit a nick and a strike in the tree, in order to place or complacently place Pennywise back in his own place with the help of Will and, of course, the adults in the film. And this is why you would think that Pennywise goes after the kids more than the adults, because the kids have a integrably smart and, really thought-provoking, rebellious mind state and mindset in order to stop any of the plans that, of course, Ingrid and Pennywise both from previously are going to be incapable of doing and accomplishing in their own right, in their own guard. Yeah, man, this was a absolute phenomenal episode to an entirely entertaining, breathtaking, engaging series all the way around. It leaves you with a lot of questions, but at the same time, it gives you a lot of answers, and it leaves you guessing with a lot of wow moments, a lot of awe and jaw-dropping moments that really give you something to hold on to and latch on to. And the things also that I appreciate about what I learned about in this, of course, Pennywise played by Bill Skarsgard. It's not just any other evil clown. Like even in the miniseries with Tim Curry, and then even in Chapter 1, like I said, we learn more about Mike, and we learn more about his origins. We learn a little bit more about his past, not enough about Will, and of course, we get more feeling about Rich, his fight and his mode for survival. Marge, as she gets into as she got on into later in the show, but mainly the center focus is around Lily, Ronnie, and Charlotte and Will. Mainly the center focus is around them because they were the main pieces, integratical pieces to the show, and really gave us the sense of entertainment. And it really makes you care about not just Pennywise, who is a cosmic entity. Pennywise is a cosmic entity, and what that specifically means is you can't just defeat him with weapons and bullets and stuff that like the military will form, because that just doesn't work on him. Because he'll easily, like I said, like you said, just end up turning into like a little like a dragon, or end up turning into a bat, or it end up just flying around all over you. You can't just do the things that you normally typically do to shoot down criminals, because he's just not that. And you can see how General Shaw in this episode, and he was talking with Dick, and he was talking with uh, Leroy, he was talking with a few others, right? That he could find a way to control um, he could find a way to control Pennywise, and you can't do that. And the kids found out you couldn't do that, and the kids were a little bit smarter than the adults, that knowing that you can't control them like that. It's just never gonna work. But yeah, man, this show just really kept you on your toes, really kept me engaged, really kept me really forward thinking all around. I just wanted to do a little bright recap of the last 3 episodes, because those are my favorite ones, and it brung the most emotion out of me. So that's why I was reading it like that. But yeah, those were my thoughts about it. Welcome to Derry. I give this show straight up a 4 out of 4 stars, man. Definitely will be in my top shows of the year, and I definitely recommend anybody who has not seen it to go check it out. I'm gonna get on out of here because it's about time for me to get me some sleep. I'm pretty tired, but yeah, man. Thank you all for watching. I'm out. Peace.